She was cast into winter's embrace, and he came seeking forgiveness in her footprints. The wind carved through the mountain pass like a blade through bone. Kira's feet left crimson prints in the snow, each step a rebellion against the death her former pack had sentenced her to. The omega mark on her wrist burned beneath frozen skin, not from cold, but from the rejection that had severed her bond 3 nights prior. They had called her barren, cursed, a stain upon the bloodline. Her alpha, former alpha, had spoken the words before the entire pack under the full moon. You are no longer one of us. The ceremonial iron around her throat had been removed, replaced by nothing but the ghost of its weight. She had not begged, had not wept. She had turned toward the northern mountains where exiles went to die, and she had walked. Now the ice land stretched before her, endless and white. The stories said nothing lived here except ancient spirits and the bones of the forgotten. Kira welcomed both. Better to be forgotten than remembered as broken. She found shelter as the sun bled into the horizon, a cave carved into black stone, its entrance narrow enough to block the wind. Inside, ice formations caught the last light, refracting it into shards of pale blue and silver. She gathered what dry wood existed at the cave's mouth, her fingers clumsy and dark with frostbite. The fire she built was small, pathetic, but it was hers. As flames licked at frozen bark, Kira pulled the only possession she had carried from her pack, a small leather pouch containing her mother's ashes. The woman had died giving birth to her, and Kira had never known if that made her loved or resented. She held the pouch against her chest and closed her eyes. I'm sorry I couldn't be what they wanted, she whispered to the dead. The wind answered with a howl that sounded almost like forgiveness. She did not hear the second set of footsteps until they were nearly upon her cave. Kira's eyes snapped open, her body tensed, every survival instinct screaming. She grabbed a sharp stone from beside the fire and pressed herself against the cave wall, watching the entrance. A shadow filled it, massive, broad-shouldered, the silhouette of a wolf who walked as a man. Then he collapsed. The Alpha King hit the cave floor with a sound like thunder, his breath ragged and shallow. Blood pooled beneath him, black in the firelight. His cloak was torn, his armor dented and cracked, and across his chest, 3 parallel wounds leaked crimson, claw marks that went deep. Kira should have let him die, should have walked past him into the storm and never looked back. Instead, she knelt beside him. His eyes opened, silver like moonlight on metal. They focused on her with effort, recognition flickering across his face before fading into confusion. You. His voice was gravel and smoke. The banished one. Don't speak. Kira pressed her hands against his wounds, feeling the heat of his blood against her frozen fingers. You'll bleed out. Let me. The words struck her harder than any rejection. She stared at him, this king, this legend who commanded the largest pack in the northern territories, the wolf whose justice was supposedly absolute. Why are you here? She demanded. He tried to smile, failed, following, a ghost. His eyes closed again, consciousness slipping. Kira looked at the entrance, at the storm beyond, at the pouch of her mother's ashes by the fire. Every choice she had ever made had led to loss. Every trust had turned to betrayal. But his blood was warm against her palms, and something in her chest, something she thought had died with her rejection, stirred. She tore strips from her own cloak and began to bind his wounds. You're a fool, she told him, though he could not hear. And so am I. The fire crackled. The wind howled. And in a cave at the edge of the world, an exiled Omega began the work of saving an Alpha King who had come seeking what she no longer believed existed, redemption. The Alpha King did not wake for 2 days. Kira kept the fire burning with wood she scavenged from dead trees near the cave mouth, venturing out only during brief moments when the storm relented. Each time she returned, she checked his pulse, steady but weak, and changed his bandages with strips torn from both their cloaks. His wounds were deep, but they were not festering. That surprised her. Claw marks from a rival alpha usually carried poison, venom from jealousy and rage that turned flesh black and mind fevered. These were clean, brutal, but clean. She wondered what battle he had fled, what enemy had been strong enough to wound a king. On the third morning, his eyes opened. Kira was stirring a thin broth made from melted snow and the last of her dried meat when she felt his gaze. She turned slowly, meeting those silver eyes across the fire. "You stayed," he said. His voice was stronger now, though still rough. "You would have died." That was the point. Kira set down the wooden bowl she had carved from a branch. "Then you're more foolish than I thought." He tried to sit up, winced, and settled for propping himself against the cave wall. His hand moved instinctively to his chest, fingers finding the bandages. "You bound me." "I did. Why?" The question hung between them like smoke. Kira studied him, this king who had everything, who commanded thousands, whose word was law across territories she had never seen. And yet he lay in a cave, asking why an exile had chosen mercy. "Because I know what it feels like," she said quietly, "to want the world to let you go." Something shifted in his expression, recognition, understanding, shame. "I know who you are," he said after a moment. "Kira of the Silver Creek Pack, rejected by Alpha Marcus 3 moons ago, banished for being barren." She cut him off, her voice sharp. "Yes, the entire North knows by now, I'm sure. That's not why I followed you." The words struck her silent. She stared at him, searching for deception, for cruelty, found neither. "Then why?" The Alpha King closed his eyes, his jaw working as though the answer cost him something. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of confession. "Because your rejection was registered in the king's archives. Because Marcus requested formal approval to exile you under the old laws." He opened his eyes. "And because I granted it." Kira felt the cave walls close in. The fire dimmed. The warmth bled from her chest. "You signed my death warrant." "Yes." "And now you come here seeking what? Forgiveness?" "No." His silver eyes held hers without flinching. "I came seeking proof that I was wrong." The wind howled outside. Inside, the fire crackled. Between them, the truth settled like snow, soft at first, then crushing. "I have spent 5 years as Alpha King," he continued, his voice low and deliberate. 5 years enforcing laws I inherited. Laws that say an Omega who cannot bear children has no value to the pack. Laws written by kings who believed strength was everything. He paused. 3 nights ago, I watched the moon rise over my kingdom and realized I had become exactly what I swore I would never be. A king who valued power over mercy. Kira's hands trembled. "So you came here to die with a clear conscience." "I came here to see if you survived, if you proved the old laws wrong simply by refusing to surrender." He looked at her with something that might have been wonder. "And you did." "I survived out of spite." "That's still survival." She wanted to hate him, wanted to let that hatred burn hotter than the fire between them. But something in his words, in the rawness of his confession, cracked the ice around her heart. "The wounds on your chest," she said, changing the subject before emotion could overwhelm her. "Who gave them to you?" His expression darkened. "My brother. He challenged me for the throne when I announced I was leaving to find you. Called me weak. Said a king who questions the old laws deserves to fall." "Did you kill him?" "No, I let him wound me and walked away." He met her eyes. "Because I needed to understand what it meant to be cast out, to be judged unworthy." Kira stood abruptly, her body trembling with something between rage and grief. You'll never understand. You chose this. I didn't. You're right. His voice was quiet. And that's exactly why I need to learn from you. She turned to face him fully, this broken king in her stolen cave. What do you want from me? Teach me what mercy looks like when you've been shown none. The request hung in the frozen air. Outside, the storm began to howl again. They fell into an uneasy rhythm. Kira hunted during the brief hours of weak sunlight, setting snares for snow hares, gathering ice moss that grew on the northern face of rocks. The Alpha King, who told her his name was Theron, recovered slowly. By the 5th day, he could stand. By the 7th, he could walk to the cave entrance and back. They did not speak of the past, not yet. Instead, they spoke of survival. The ice moss, Theron said, watching her crush the pale green plant between stones. My pack considers it poisonous. Your pack is wrong. Kira added the paste to boiling water. Boiled. It prevents frostbite from spreading. My mother taught me before she died. He was silent for a moment. You never knew her. No, but her healer friends told me her secrets, said she wanted me to survive, even if she couldn't. Kira stirred the mixture. I used to think that was cruel, leaving me knowledge but no love. Now I understand it was both. Theron moved closer to the fire, his movements still careful around his healing wounds. Your former Alpha said you had no gifts, no abilities beyond the standard Omega traits. Kira's hand stilled. Is that what the records say? Yes. She looked up at him, measuring. And if I told you the records were incomplete? His silver eyes sharpened with interest. Then I would ask you to show me the truth. She set down her wooden spoon and held out her hand, palm up. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air above her skin began to shimmer, and a small flame appeared, not from friction or spark, but from nothing. It danced in her palm, casting shadows across the cave walls. Pathfinder fire, Theron breathed, the lost gift of the ancient Omegas. Not lost. Kira closed her hand, extinguishing the flame. Hidden. Because Alphas like Marcus feared what they couldn't control. He knew I had this gift. He rejected me anyway because he wanted a breeder, not a keeper of old magic. Theron's expression shifted through disbelief, wonder, and finally something that looked like grief. The laws I enforced were designed to eliminate wolves like you. Yes, and I signed your exile without question. Yes. He turned away, his broad shoulders tense beneath his torn shirt. How many others have I condemned? I don't know. Kira stood, moving to stand beside him at the cave entrance. Beyond, the ice land stretched endlessly white. But you're here now. That counts for something. Does it? He looked at her, and she saw the full weight of his crown in that gaze. Not the physical one left behind in his kingdom, but the invisible burden of every decision, every law, every life he had affected. I can't undo what I've done. No, but you can choose differently going forward. And if my pack won't follow, then you find a new pack. The words hung between them. Theron studied her face as though seeing her for the first time, not as an exile, not as a responsibility, but as an equal. You would have made a better king than I ever was. I don't want to be king. Kira's voice was firm. I want to be free. Then why did you save me? She didn't have an answer, or rather she had too many answers, each one tangled with emotions she wasn't ready to name. So instead, she changed the subject. Your brother, the one who wounded you. What will he do while you're gone? Theron's jaw tightened. Rule in my absence, enforce the old laws with even more cruelty than I did. He believes mercy is weakness. And you don't anymore? I'm beginning to understand that mercy is the hardest form of strength. He looked at her. You showed me that when you chose to save someone who destroyed your life. Kira felt something crack open in her chest, not breaking, but blooming. She had spent so long believing she was worthless, believing her rejection defined her, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be seen as powerful. "The storm is clearing," she said, pointing to the horizon where the clouds were beginning to part. "In a few days, you'll be strong enough to travel. And then? Then you go back to your kingdom, make different choices, prove that you meant what you said." Theron turned to face her fully. "What about you?" "I'll stay here. This is where exiles belong." "No." His voice was low but certain. "This is where you survived. There's a difference." The cave fell silent, except for the crackling fire. Outside, the first rays of true sunlight in days broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the snow. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from, and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. The 8th day brought a gift Kira had not expected: silence. Not the oppressive silence of isolation, but the comfortable quiet of two people who had learned to exist in the same space without needing to fill it with words. She mended what remained of their clothes by the fire, while Theron practiced moving through combat forms, testing the limits of his healing wounds. She watched him when she thought he wasn't looking, studied the way he moved, powerful but controlled, like a storm that had learned to be gentle. His silver eyes caught the firelight whenever he turned, and she found herself wondering what it would be like to be seen by those eyes not as an exile, but as something more. Dangerous thoughts for a rejected Omega. "You're staring," Theron said without stopping his movements. Kira felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I'm observing. There's a difference." "Is there?" He completed a final rotation and turned to face her, breathing only slightly elevated. "What have you observed?" "That you move like you're still carrying the weight of your crown. That you flinch every time you reach for your chest, not from pain, but from memory. That you look at me the way no one ever has, like I matter." "That you favor your left side," she said instead. "The wounds on your right are deeper than you admitted." Theron moved to sit across from her, close enough that she could see the thin scars beginning to form across his chest. "My brother always attacked from the right, even when we were children sparring. I should have anticipated it." "Why didn't you?" "Because I wanted him to win." The confession came quietly. "I wanted to believe that if I failed, if I fell, someone stronger would take my place and make better choices than I had." Kira set down her needle. "That's not strength. That's surrender." "Perhaps, but I'm tired of being strong in the wrong ways." He met her eyes. "In my kingdom, strength meant conquest, dominance, the ability to crush opposition. I was good at it, too good. And now? Now I'm learning that true strength might be something else entirely. The courage to admit fault, the will to change, the mercy to forgive." He paused. "Both yourself and others." Kira felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the bindings she had wrapped around her heart since her rejection. "You speak like someone who has thought deeply about this." "I've had nothing but time to think. 9 days in a cave with someone who should hate me but chose compassion instead." He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Kira, do you hate me?" The question was direct, unflinching. She considered lying, considered giving him the answer he expected. Instead, she gave him the truth. "I did. When you first told me you signed my exile, I wanted to let you bleed out in the snow." She held his gaze. "But hatred is exhausting, and you're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "A tyrant. A king drunk on power who saw wolves like me as disposable." She paused. "Instead, I found someone broken by the weight of his own laws, someone searching for redemption." "And did I find it?" "I don't know. Redemption isn't something I can give you. You have to earn it." Theron nodded slowly. Then I'll spend however long it takes. The fire crackled. Outside, night had fallen completely, and the moon rose full and bright over the icelands. Its light poured through the cave entrance, silver and pure. The moon is full, Kira observed. Back in my former pack, this would be the night of the lunar gathering. The Alpha would make decrees, wolves would pledge loyalty. And you would be there if Marcus hadn't rejected you. I would be invisible, even if I were there. Omegas without status don't attend the inner circles. Theron was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, extending his hand. Dance with me. Kira blinked. What? Dance with me, here, now, under the moon that sees everything and judges nothing. There's no music. The wind is music, the fire is rhythm, and the moon has been singing since before our ancestors first shifted. His hand remained extended. Unless you're afraid. Of dancing? Of being seen. The challenge in his words struck something deep within her. Kira stood slowly, her heart hammering. She placed her hand in his, and his fingers closed around hers, warm, calloused, gentle. He led her to the cave entrance, where moonlight spilled across the stone. Then he placed one hand on her waist and kept the other holding hers, and he began to move. It wasn't a formal dance. There were no steps from courtly traditions. Instead, it was swaying, turning slowly, two bodies finding rhythm in the space between heartbeats. The wind did sing, the fire did pulse, and the moon watched as an exiled Omega and a fallen king moved together beneath its light. I never danced before, Kira whispered. Neither did I. Not like this. Not because I wanted to. They turned slowly, and Kira felt something she thought she'd never feel again. Safe. Not protected by walls or laws, but safe in the presence of someone who saw her completely and chose to stay anyway. When we leave here, Theron said softly, everything will change. I know. You could stay. Build a life in the Icelands. Be free of pacts and politics. I could, but you won't. Kira looked up at him, at those silver eyes that reflected moonlight. No, because you taught me something too. What's that? That running from pain doesn't heal it. And that mercy isn't just something you show others. Sometimes you have to show it to yourself. Theron's hand tightened slightly on her waist. What are you saying? I'm saying that when you go back to challenge your brother, I'm coming with you. They left the cave on the 10th morning. Theron's wounds had healed enough for travel, though Kira insisted he keep the leather binding across his chest for support. She packed what little they had, dried meat, the pouch of her mother's ashes, strips of cloth that might serve as bandages. The Icelands looked different in daylight. Still brutal, still endless, but beautiful in a way Kira had not allowed herself to see. The snow sparkled like crushed diamonds. The mountains rose like the spine of some ancient sleeping creature, and the sky stretched blue and clear, promising safe passage. It's 3 days to the border of my territory, Theron said, studying the horizon. 4 days to the capital from there. 7 days to face your brother. Yes. Kira adjusted the pack on her shoulders. Tell me about him. Not the Alpha who challenged you, but the brother. Who was he before the crown mattered? Theron began walking, and she fell into step beside him. For a while, he didn't answer. Then, slowly, he began to speak. Rowan was 2 years younger than me. Growing up, he was the one who laughed, who played. I was always training, always preparing to be king. He used to say I took life too seriously. A sad smile crossed his face. He was right. What changed? Our father died. The crown passed to me, and Rowan realized he would spend his entire life in my shadow. Theron's jaw tightened. I tried to include him, made him my second, gave him power and respect, but it wasn't enough. He didn't want to serve. He wanted to rule. So he challenged you. Not immediately. First, he began whispering to the council, planting doubts about my leadership, questioning my decisions. Theron glanced at her. When I told them I was reviewing the exile laws, Rowan called it weakness, said I was being influenced by sentiment rather than reason. And the council agreed? Half of them. The other half stayed silent, which is its own form of agreement. Kira understood. So when you left to find me, you gave him exactly what he wanted, a chance to prove you unfit. Yes, though I didn't see it as giving up, I saw it as... He trailed off, searching for words. Choosing conscience over convenience? Something like that. They walked in silence for a while, their footsteps crunching in the snow. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows behind them. Kira's legs ached, her fingers were numb, but she pushed forward. She had survived exile. She would survive this too. What will you do when you get back? She asked. Challenge him directly. I'll invoke the right of reckoning. Ancient law that allows an alpha king to reclaim his throne through trial, not just combat. I'll present evidence that the old laws are failing our packs, that strength isn't measured only in bloodlines and breeding. They'll want proof. Then I'll give them proof. He stopped walking and turned to face her. You, the Pathfinder gift. The fact that you survived where others would have died. Your living evidence that the laws are wrong. Kira felt her stomach tighten. You want me to reveal myself to your council. I want you to show them what they've been destroying. His voice was urgent now. Kira, you're not just an exile who survived. You're a keeper of gifts that could help entire packs. Pathfinder fire can guide wolves through the darkest territories, can protect them from cold that kills. Your people were eliminated because they threatened the power structure, not because they were weak. And you think showing them my gift will change minds? I think it will force them to confront what they've lost in the name of purity and control. Kira turned away, her heart racing. Everything Theron said made sense, but exposing herself meant vulnerability, meant trusting wolves who had already proven they valued power over mercy. What if they try to eliminate me too? She asked quietly. They'll have to go through me first. She looked back at him. This king who had followed her into exile, who had let himself be wounded rather than kill his brother, who danced with her under moonlight like she was worthy of being held. Why do you care so much? The question came out raw. You could walk away, disappear, start fresh somewhere your name means nothing. Theron stepped closer, his silver eyes intense. Because I've spent 5 years being a king who valued the wrong things, and 9 days learning what actually matters from someone who had every reason to let me die, but chose mercy instead. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face with one hand. Because you make me want to be better than I was. Kira's breath caught. His hand was warm against her frozen cheek. His thumb brushed gently across her skin, and she realized she was crying, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of being seen completely. I'm not a symbol, she whispered. I'm just trying to survive. You're both, and that's exactly why you're powerful. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch for just a moment. Then she stepped back, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. If I do this, if I stand before your council and reveal what I am, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise that if they reject your reckoning, if they choose Rowan and the old ways, you'll let me disappear. No tracking, no following, no trying to save me again. Theron's expression hardened. I can't promise that. Then I can't help you. They stood facing each other, wills clashing silently. The wind howled around them, cold and unforgiving. Finally, Theron spoke. I'll promise this instead. If they reject the reckoning and choose Rowan, I'll abdicate completely. No claim to the throne. And I'll disappear with you. We'll find a territory where the old laws don't reach. Kira stared at him. You would give up your kingdom? I already did, the moment I walked into the Icelands. He held her gaze. A crown means nothing if you wear it while losing your soul. I learned that from you. Her heart hammered. You're insane. Probably. Your pack will hate you. Most already do. And Rowan will hunt us. Then we'll fight together. Kira felt something break open in her chest. Not pain, but possibility. For the first time since her rejection, she allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't just survival. A future where she wasn't alone. 7 days, she said finally. We have 7 days to prepare. Theron smiled. A real smile, not the careful expression of a king, but the honest joy of a man who had found hope. Then let's not waste them. They continued walking, side by side across the Icelands. Behind them, the cave where they had found each other grew smaller. Ahead, the border of his kingdom waited. And between them, something fragile and fierce had begun to grow. Something that felt like redemption. They reached the border on the 3rd day, just as darkness fell. The crossing point was marked by ancient stones carved with pack symbols, territorial claims stretching back centuries. Theron paused before the largest marker, his hand tracing the wolf sigil of his kingdom. Beyond this point, I'm Alpha King again, he said quietly. Or at least I'm expected to be. Kira studied the stones, each one representing power, hierarchy, laws she had been crushed beneath. Are you ready? No. He turned to her. But I'm willing. They crossed together. The landscape shifted almost immediately. The harsh beauty of the Icelands gave way to dense forest, and the air grew warmer, carrying scents of pine and damp earth. Kira's body remembered these smells. Pack territory, marked boundaries, the invisible lines that separated belonging from exile. We'll reach my hunting lodge by morning, Theron said. It's small, private. We can rest and prepare there before approaching the capital. And if your brother already knows you're coming, then we'll face that when it comes. They walked through the night, neither trusting sleep in unfamiliar territory. Theron moved differently here, more alert, shoulders tense with the weight of returning responsibility. Kira noticed how his eyes scanned constantly, how his hand drifted toward where a weapon should hang. You miss it, she observed. What? Leading, protecting, being the one others rely on. He considered this. I miss the purpose, not the burden. Can you separate the two? I'm going to have to. Dawn found them at the lodge, a stone structure built into a hillside, camouflaged by overhanging trees. Theron approached cautiously, checking for signs of disturbance. Finding none, he opened the door. Inside, dust-coated simple furniture, a cold hearth, weapons mounted on walls, and on a table near the window, a sealed letter bearing the royal wolf seal. Theron picked it up slowly, his expression darkening. Rowan knew I'd come here. What does it say? He broke the seal and read silently. Then he handed it to Kira. Brother, by now you've returned from your foolish quest to save a worthless exile. The council has declared you unfit. Your throne is mine by right of strength and clarity. But I am not without mercy. Return alone, bow before me, and I will grant you a place in my guard. Bring the Omega, and I will show the pack what happens to kings who value sentiment over law. You have 3 days. Rowan, Alpha King. Kira set down the letter, her hands steady despite the rage building in her chest. He's baiting you. Yes. If you go alone, he'll kill you. Probably. And if we go together, he'll make an example of both of us. And Theron moved to the hearth and began building a fire. Then we changed the terms. We don't go to him. We force him to come to us. Kira's mind raced. The right of reckoning. You said it was ancient law. It is, and it must be witnessed by the council in neutral territory, neither the capital nor the challenger's ground. Theron's silver eyes gleamed with strategic focus. There's a sacred grove 2 days from here, where Alpha Kings have been crowned since the first packs formed. If I invoke the reckoning there, Rowan can't refuse without losing honor. And the council? Will have to come. All of them. It's law. He turned to face her. But it means sending word, announcing our location, giving Rowan time to prepare. He'll bring warriors. I'm counting on it. Theron's expression hardened. Because I'm not just challenging him for the throne. I'm challenging the entire system. The laws that made you an exile, the beliefs that value bloodlines over gifts, the structure that turns wolves against each other. Kira felt her Pathfinder gift stir beneath her skin, responding to his conviction. That's not a challenge. That's a revolution. Then so be it. They spent the day preparing. Theron sent 3 ravens, one to the council, one to loyal pack members he still trusted, and one directly to Rowan with formal terms of reckoning. Kira practiced with her gift, calling forth flames that danced across her palms and didn't burn, shaping them into shields and spears of light. As sunset painted the sky crimson, they sat together on the lodge's porch, watching the forest darken. "Tell me about the sacred grove," Kira said. "It's old, older than any pack. The trees there remember the first wolves who learned to walk as men. The ground is soaked with centuries of oaths and blood." Theron's voice carried reverence. "They say the goddess herself watches from those trees. That truth cannot hide there. Do you believe that?" "I believe some places hold power, and that power responds to conviction." Kira pulled her knees to her chest. "I'm afraid." "Good. Fear means you understand what we're risking. What if I freeze? What if I can't use my gift when it matters?" Theron reached over and took her hand. "Then we'll fail together. But at least we'll fail trying to change something that needed changing." She looked at their joined hands, his scarred and strong, hers small but marked with frostbite and survival. 2 broken people who had found each other in exile and dared to imagine redemption. "Why me?" The question came softly. "Of all the exiles you could have followed, why did you choose me?" Theron was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke with careful honesty. "Because when they told me about your case, something felt wrong. Marcus presented you as defective, worthless, a drain on pack resources. But the report also mentioned that you tended the elderly, that children followed you, that you knew every herb and healing practice from the old ways." He met her eyes. "I realized I had signed the exile of someone who embodied everything we claim to value: service, knowledge, compassion, simply because she couldn't breed. And I knew then that I had become exactly what I swore I'd never be: a tyrant who confused strength with cruelty." Tears burned Kira's eyes. "You came to the Icelands to find me, not just any exile. I came to find you, to apologize, to see if someone I had condemned could teach me what justice actually meant. And did I? You showed me that justice without mercy is just another form of violence, and that mercy without accountability means nothing." He squeezed her hand gently. "You showed me that true strength is choosing compassion even when the world tells you it's weakness. Comment Luna if you'd walk through the storm for someone who saw your worth." Kira leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Tomorrow, they would send word. In 3 days, they would face Rowan. But tonight, they had this: peace, connection, the fragile hope that change was possible. "Luna watch over us," she whispered. "She already is," Theron replied. "She sent us to each other." The sacred grove stood at the heart of the forest, where ancient oaks grew in a perfect circle around a clearing carpeted with silver moss. Kira felt the power of the place before she saw it, a thrumming in her blood, a pull like gravity towards something older than language. As they stepped between the massive trees, she understood why kings were crowned here. This wasn't just land. It was sacred ground where the veil between worlds grew thin. "They're already here," Theron said quietly. He was right. Figures emerged from the tree line, council members in ceremonial robes, warriors bearing pack standards, and at the center, Rowan. Theron's brother looked like him, but harder, as though someone had taken the same features and carved away every soft edge. His silver eyes held no warmth, only calculation. He wore the crown, a circlet of iron and bone that marked him as Alpha King. "Brother," Rowan's voice carried across the clearing. "You actually came." "I invoked the right of reckoning," Theron replied, stepping forward. "Ancient law demands your answer." "Ancient law is for wolves who still believe the old ways matter." Rowan's gaze shifted to Kira. "And this is the exile you risked everything to save? She looks half dead." Kira felt the council's eyes on her, measuring, judging, already dismissing. But she also felt Theron beside her, steady and certain. "This is Kira," Theron said clearly. "And she carries a gift your old laws tried to destroy." Murmurs rippled through the council. Rowan's expression darkened. "You brought an exile before the sacred grove. You've already violated pack law." "I brought evidence. A keeper of Pathfinder gifts, the magic your predecessors eliminated because they feared power they couldn't control." "Pathfinder gifts are myth," one council member called out. "Stories to scare children." Theron looked at Kira. She felt her heart hammering, her hands shaking. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to protect herself the way she'd learned in exile. Instead, she stepped forward. Kira raised her hand, and flame blossomed from her palm. Not the red-orange of natural fire, but silver-white like moonlight made solid. She shaped it into a sphere that hovered above her fingers, then sent it spinning upward until it hung above the clearing like a second moon. The council fell silent. "Pathfinder fire," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "The gift that guided our ancestors through the darkest nights. The power that kept packs alive when winter threatened to consume them." She looked at Rowan. "Your laws called wolves like me defective, worthless. But my mother's mother kept an entire territory from starving, and her mother before her saved a generation from plague." "Ancient history," Rowan spat. "We don't need old magic anymore. We have strength, organization, modern hierarchy." "And exile rates have tripled in the last decade," Theron countered. "Infant mortality is rising. Our borders shrink year after year because we've lost the gifts that made us strong. Not physical strength, spiritual strength. The kind that comes from valuing all members of a pack, not just those who fit narrow definitions of worth." One of the elder council members stepped forward, a woman with white hair and eyes that had seen too many kings. "You speak of revolution, Alpha King Theron. But revolution built on sentiment is revolution that fails." "I don't speak of sentiment," Theron replied. "I speak of survival. Our packs are dying because we've forgotten what actually makes us strong: community, diversity, the wisdom to value gifts we don't fully understand." He turned to address the entire council. "I challenge not just my brother, but the system that placed him on that throne. The laws that say breeding determines worth. The traditions that eliminate instead of elevate." "And if we reject your challenge?" another council member asked. "Then I abdicate completely, and history will judge you for what you destroyed in the name of purity." Rowan laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You always were too soft, brother, too willing to question instead of command. That's why you'll fail." "Then prove it," Theron said quietly. "Face me in the reckoning, not combat, trial. Present your vision for our packs against mine. Let the council decide which path leads to strength." The grove fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Finally, the elder council member spoke. "The right of reckoning demands 3 challenges. First, the challenge of vision. Each alpha must present their path. Second, the challenge of truth. The sacred ground will test your convictions. Third, the challenge of choice. The council and the goddess decide. Rowan stepped forward, radiating confidence. I accept. And when I win, brother, I'll show our packs what happens to those who mistake weakness for wisdom. The trials began. Rowan spoke first, his voice powerful and certain. He painted a vision of packs, united through strength, where the weak served the strong, where bloodlines remained pure, where tradition guided every decision. He invoked the names of their ancestors, the glory of past conquests, the fear enemies held for their kingdom. It was compelling. Even Kira felt the pull of his words, the promise of simplicity, of clear hierarchies, of belonging through conformity. Then Theron spoke. My brother offers you the path we've already walked, and yes, it led to conquests, to territories claimed and enemies crushed. He paused. It also led to exile rates tripling, to gifts being destroyed instead of cultivated, to a kingdom where fear maintains order because loyalty has been replaced by compliance. He turned slowly, addressing each council member directly. I offer you something harder, a path where we question our assumptions, where we value wolves for what they contribute, not just what they breed, where an Omega who can call forth Pathfinder fire is celebrated as the treasure she is, not condemned as defective. Kira felt the weight of attention shift to her. The silver fire still hovered above the clearing, pulsing with her heartbeat. This is the choice, Theron continued. Easy strength that requires no growth, no change, no uncomfortable questions. Or difficult strength that demands we evolve, that asks us to become better than we were. The sacred ground began to glow. Kira felt it first, a warmth rising from the silver moss, spreading through the clearing. The ancient trees seemed to lean inward, witnessing. And in the air, something shimmered. The challenge of truth had begun. The sacred ground tests conviction, the elder council member announced. It strips away deception and reveals the heart of what each alpha truly believes. Brace yourselves. The glow intensified, and suddenly images flickered in the air above them. Memories, fears, truths made visible. Above Rowan appeared visions of his deepest self. A child constantly overshadowed, a warrior never quite good enough. A man whose hunger for power came not from strength, but from desperate need to prove his worth. The images showed him eliminating dissent, crushing opposition, ruling through fear because he couldn't imagine ruling through love. Rowan's face twisted with rage. Lies! The Grove shows lies! The Grove shows truth, the elder said quietly, as it always has. Then the glow shifted to Theron, and above him appeared different images. A young king overwhelmed by responsibility. Decisions made from duty rather than conviction. The moment he signed Kira's exile, and the shame that had haunted him ever since. His wound from Rowan's claws, and his choice to walk away rather than kill. But also, his face as he found Kira in the cave. The gentleness with which he bound her wounds. The slow awakening of conscience that had led him here. The council watched in silence. Finally, the glow faded. The clearing returned to normal, though the air still hummed with power. We have seen truth, the elder council member said. Now comes the choice. Council members, what say you? Which path do we walk? One by one, they spoke. The results were not unanimous. Some chose tradition, safety, the comfort of what they knew. Others chose risk, growth, the chance to evolve. When the final vote was tallied, the elder turned to face both brothers. The council is divided, 7 for tradition, 7 for change. Rowan smiled triumphantly. A tie means the crown stays with the current ruler. Me. Not quite, the elder corrected. A tie means the goddess decides. The sacred ground has shown us truth. Now it will show us destiny. The silver moss began to glow again, brighter this time, and from the center of the clearing, a single flower bloomed, white petals edged with gold, growing from nowhere, defying season and logic. The elder knelt, studying it. Then she stood, her ancient eyes bright with wonder. The goddess has chosen. This is Luna's blessing, a flower that blooms only when true change is needed. She turned to Theron. The throne is yours, Alpha King, not because you are strongest, but because you are willing to grow. Rowan's roar shook the clearing. No! This is manipulation! The exile witch has poisoned you all! He shifted, fur erupting, bones cracking, wolf form exploding forth. He lunged not at Theron, but at Kira. Everything happened in heartbeats. Theron threw himself between them. Kira's Pathfinder fire erupted in a shield of silver flame, and the sacred ground itself responded, roots bursting from the earth to entangle Rowan mid-leap, holding him suspended and snarling. Enough! The elder's voice carried power that froze them all. Rowan, son of the Northern Territories, you have violated sacred ground. You are hereby exiled from all Packlands for one full cycle of seasons. Perhaps in that time you will learn what your brother discovered in the Icelands. That true strength comes from choosing to change, not from refusing to bend. The roots released him. Rowan landed hard, shifting back to human form, naked and defeated. He looked at Theron with pure hatred. This isn't over. No, Theron agreed quietly, but it's a beginning. Guards escorted Rowan from the grove. The council dispersed, some with grudging acceptance, others with cautious hope. Soon only Theron, Kira, and the elder remained. You've started something that won't be easy to finish, the elder told Theron. Half your council still resists. The old ways die hard. I know. And you, she turned to Kira. You've been marked as a symbol now. Wolves will come seeking your gifts. Others will come seeking your death. Are you prepared? Kira thought about the cave in the Icelands, the exile, the long walk through snow, and finally, the moment she chose to save rather than abandon. I've survived worse, she said, and I won't be alone. The elder smiled, the first genuine warmth Kira had seen from her. No, you won't. She touched the Luna's blessing flower, and it dissolved into light. The goddess watches. Remember that in the dark times ahead. She left them standing in the sacred grove as twilight settled over the trees. Theron turned to Kira, and she saw in his eyes everything they'd been through. The cave, the journey, the trials, the choice to keep choosing each other. So, he said softly, what now? Kira looked at the clearing where a flower had bloomed to mark the beginning of change. Then she looked at this king who had followed her into exile and found redemption in the snow. Now we prove that mercy is stronger than tradition, that growth is more valuable than stagnation, that an exiled Omega and a fallen king can change the world. She held out her hand. Theron took it. And together they walked from the sacred grove toward a kingdom that would never be the same. 3 months later, snow fell on the castle where Kira now lived. She stood at the window of her chambers, not servants' quarters, but a tower room that overlooked the Northern Territories. From here, she could see the forest, the mountains, and in the distance, the faint line where the Icelands began. Below, wolves gathered for the evening meal. Among them moved Omegas, who had been called back from exile, their gifts awakening under careful cultivation. Pathfinders like her, healers whose hands glowed with lunar light, seers who read the stars, all the abilities the old laws had tried to eliminate. It wasn't perfect. Half the council still resisted every change Theron proposed. Former supporters of Rowan whispered in corners, plotting rebellion. And there were nights when Kira woke gasping, certain she was back in the cave, alone and freezing. but it was better, and better was enough for now. "You're thinking too loudly," Theron said from the doorway. Kira turned. He wore simple clothes now, the crown only for formal occasions, preferring to move among his wolves as an equal when possible. The scars on his chest had faded to silver lines, but she knew he bore deeper wounds still healing. "I was thinking about how far we've come," she said. He crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "And how far we have to go?" "That too." They stood together, watching the kingdom shift and change beneath them. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children played in the courtyard, and somewhere in the distance, wolves howled, not in aggression, but in communion. "I received word from the Eastern Territories," Theron said quietly. "They're considering adopting our reforms, allowing gifts to be cultivated instead of feared. And the Southern Territories? Still refuse. Their alpha says we're weakening the bloodlines." Kira sighed. Change is slow, but it's happening. He turned her to face him. "Because of you. Because you chose to save a king who didn't deserve it and showed him what strength actually meant. I chose to save someone who was trying to be better. There's a difference." Theron smiled, that real smile she had first seen in the Icelands, the one that made him look younger, lighter. "Have I told you today that you're extraordinary?" "Not since this morning. A terrible oversight." He kissed her then, gentle and sure. When they pulled apart, Kira saw everything in his eyes: gratitude, love, the promise of choosing each other again and again. "The council wants us to formalize," he said, "announce a formal bonding, unite the reforms under a symbolic union. And what do you want?" "I want whatever you want. If you choose to be my queen, I'll be honored. If you choose to remain independent and free, I'll support that too." He cupped her face. "You gave me back my conscience. I won't trap you with expectations." Kira thought about the word queen, about what it meant to step fully into this new life, about the responsibility, the visibility, the permanent binding to someone who had once signed her exile. But she also thought about dancing under moonlight, about choosing mercy over hatred, about two broken people who found redemption in each other. "Ask me properly," she said. Theron's eyes widened. Then he knelt, there in her tower room with snow falling outside and wolves howling below. "Kira of the Icelands, keeper of Pathfinder fire, exile who became the conscience of a kingdom. Will you stand beside me, not as subject or queen, but as partner? Will you help me build a world where mercy crowns the broken and strength means choosing to change?" Kira felt tears on her cheeks. She pulled him up, pressing her forehead against his. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Theron held her, and outside the tower, the snow continued to fall, soft and forgiving, covering old scars with new whiteness. The formal bonding took place in the sacred grove at the full moon. Wolves gathered from every territory, those who supported the reforms and those who merely came to witness history. The elder council member performed the ceremony, binding their hands with silver cord that glowed with lunar light. "You come before the goddess and the pack as equals," the elder said. "Not as king and subject, not as master and servant, but as two souls who chose each other in darkness and brought each other into light." Kira wore white, a simple gown, no crown, no jewels, except for a pendant holding her mother's ashes. Theron wore gray, the color of winter snow and new beginnings. When they kissed to seal the bonding, the sacred ground bloomed with flowers, Luna's blessing appearing in waves across the clearing, white petals edged with gold, each one a witness to their choice. That night, alone in the tower chamber, Kira allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had changed. She was no longer exiled, no longer rejected, no longer invisible or worthless. She was a woman who had survived the Icelands and brought change back with her. a keeper of ancient gifts. A partner to a king who was learning to rule with his heart as well as his mind. But more than that, she was free. Not free from responsibility or struggle. The path ahead would be difficult. Rowan still lived in exile, gathering followers, plotting return. Half the council resisted every innovation, and there would always be wolves who believed the old laws were sacred and shouldn't change. But she was free to choose, to stand or sit, to speak or remain silent, to love or withhold love. That freedom, bought with pain and nurtured through mercy, was worth more than any crown. Theron found her on the balcony, looking out at the snow-covered kingdom. "Can't sleep?" he asked, pulling her close. "Too much has changed, too fast. Is that a bad thing?" "No." She leaned against him. "It's terrifying and beautiful, and nothing like what I imagined when I was freezing in that cave." "What did you imagine then?" "Death, mostly. I thought the ice lands would be my grave. Instead, they became your birthplace." Theron's voice was soft. "The place where you died as an exile and were born as yourself." Kira turned to face him. In the moonlight, his silver eyes reflected starlight. "Thank you." "For what?" "For following me, for believing I mattered before I believed it myself, for choosing to change instead of choosing to crush me." Theron pulled her close, his hand cradling the back of her head. "You saved me first. In that cave, with those bandages and that small fire, you showed me that I had become something I despised. You gave me the chance to choose differently. And now? Now we keep choosing, every day, for each other, for the wolves who are tired of the old ways, for a future where gifts are celebrated instead of destroyed." They stood together as the snow fell. Two people who had been broken and had broken each other, then chosen to rebuild something stronger than what had come before. In the years that followed, the kingdom transformed. Omegas returned from exile, their gifts cultivated and honored. Pacts that had been fractured by the old laws began to heal. The borders expanded as wolves felt valued enough to commit to territories instead of fleeing them. There were setbacks. Rowan did return, leading a rebellion that took 2 years to quell. Some council members resigned rather than accept the reforms. And there were nights when Kira woke from nightmares, remembering the cold and the rejection. But there were also triumphs. Children grew up knowing they had value regardless of their ability to breed. Warriors trained alongside healers and seers, learning that strength came in many forms. The Pathfinder gift was taught openly, and soon every territory had wolves who could guide lost travelers through the darkest nights. And at the center of it all stood a king and his queen, not perfect, not without struggle, but committed to the work of transformation. Kira never forgot the Icelands. Sometimes, when the world felt too heavy, she and Theron would return to the cave where they first found each other. They would sit by the fire and remember the cold, the fear, the moment they chose mercy over hatred. "Do you regret it?" Theron asked once, as they watched flames dance in the darkness. "Regret what? Saving you?" "All of it. The visibility, the responsibility, the way your life became public property the moment you bonded with me." Kira considered this carefully. "I regret that I couldn't stay hidden. I regret that other exiles had to suffer as long as they did before the laws changed." She paused. "But I don't regret you. I don't regret choosing to fight instead of fade." Theron took her hand. "The goddess chose us for this. I'm certain of it now." The goddess, or our own stubbornness, perhaps both. They left the Icelands as the sun rose, returning to a kingdom that still needed their work, their vision, their commitment to the difficult path of transformation. Behind them, the cave filled with silence again. But it was no longer a place of exile. It was a monument to what was possible when two broken people chose to build something better together. If your heart beat alongside ours, comment and subscribe, because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive. Tell us in the comments, What would you have chosen? The safety of the old laws, or the risk of building something new? The story of Kira and Theron doesn't end here. It continues in every choice made by those who dared to believe that mercy is stronger than tradition. And their moon, silver and eternal, still watches over a kingdom learning to love what it once destroyed.